Have you ever felt stuck in patterns that you just can't explain? You do all this healing work, you do whatever it is that's part of self-growth, and yet you just end up back in that same place. And that's because our healing is not linear. It works in the spiral, cyclical journeys that actually unravel and deepen. And that makes a lot of sense when you know how the spiral works. Often we find the same body pain recurring again and again, or the same relationship pattern that seems to happen in your life, no matter how awesome the person seemed when you first met them. Or maybe it's every time you make a career change, you just seem to end up in the same dead-end job feeling unfulfilled. These repeated patterns are actually the way our energy moves. And when we can understand that there are different layers to our energy moving, and that we might have a predisposition to certain layers that we need to tend to a little bit more, we can actually make the shift with so much more ease, so much more quickly, that it actually becomes a delight. And if you notice that pattern coming back again, you can just poof it with these simple approaches. And that is because the awakening spiral explains the layers of the healing pattern that we go through as we awaken and deepen into our lives.
Allow your heart to listen.
Hi, I'm Nid, I'm a soul guide, and I work at all levels of energy. That is understanding and knowing about the body, the breath, the emotional body, energetics, not just the meridians and the chakras, but also your soul work and holding that in light body and working out in larger fields of energy. When we can work through all of these different layers of energy, we really can make shifts at very profound but also ordinary and important ways that change your way of living, and therefore can bring in the dreams that your soul is so yearning for. Really wanted to do this video when I was feeling really well. Ironically, I have a cold, and I call these spiritual flus. Now, these only happen to me when I know that I've done some really deep healing of my own. And I wanted to share with you a little story about how the awakening spiral works before we get into what it actually is. So in the last month, I had really felt the desire to build more in my community, to expand the offerings that were coming through. And with that intention, I had approached a friend to do some collaborations and build that community space. And in another community space where I've been collaborating, an issue came up, and I got really angry because I was being asked to suppress my voice. Now, as someone who's trained as an advocate, I was a lawyer by training and career before I became a soul guide, I am really well trained and gifted in objectively standing in my voice and what I see as true. And so as I stood before this situation with this person who was very angry and being quite aggressive and passive aggressive, a bit of both, I could see that the other people in the collaboration didn't even have the awareness of the way in which they were being suppressed. And my standing up gave these people their own awareness of partly where they could be empowered further. Now, I moved and I processed my emotions in a healthy way using mostly dance because that really uplifts me. And that meant that I could be in meetings and situations where I could just really see the other person's pain and hold them there without letting any of my position and my own truth move apart. It also meant that I could hold that place for the others in the collaboration to step forwards and use their voices. Now, this situation then unraveled itself very beautifully because I just left the space and held myself in forgiveness for anything I'd overstepped, any pain that I may have caused someone else in that process. And I also, in that process, gave lots of gratitude for every person for the teaching that they were revealing to me. What then happened? Well, I took an activation. I decided to activate myself to level up what it is that I'm bringing to collaborations and into my community, so that my voice is in the correct balance of everyone that has something to offer. Those series of activations gave me this amazing download of information, and I had this beautiful morning where I was like on a roll, so on fire. And it was so exciting for me to be in that place. And as I went out for a beautiful walk in a great mood, I slipped and I fell and I hurt my shoulder. And I was a little like, oh, dizzy, not feeling well. Take care of your body, Nid. Take a step back from this excitement. And so I tuned into my shoulder. What is it you're trying to tell me? Why did that just happen? I'm an overachiever. I trained myself as an overachiever as a way of ignoring my mental health issues when I was in my 20s. And it was showing me that my excitement could take me into overachieving, and that therefore I was going to be in a bit of pain while I learned to not do everything with my right hand. I was going to have to slow down and really discern what is necessary in order for me to take the next steps. Now, it just so happened that there was a family experience where all of the women in my family injured themselves in the same 2-week period. I thought, this is strange, but it's not, because I've seen this pattern in my family before. And so I asked a friend of mine, can you just help me tune in? I can't quite see this on my own, but I know that there's something happening here. And she and I one night went through very quickly. She did some channeling, I did some tuning in, and it came about that yes, there was a family contract going on and I was trying to do too much. Similar to me in that collaboration, wanting to speak too much for everyone else and not let everyone else have their place. And so for me, it was again to step back, to give back responsibility to them and just do what is my part, to not overachieve, right? Again, so these patterns, they were ancestral. They were in my family, they were in my relationships, and I was bringing them into my work, into my creativity. And as soon as we did that release and I sat and I meditated and I did all the energy work to release, I got sick. And that is why I call it spiritual flu, because I know that my cells are literally clearing out through my cold what it is that is making me limited, like making me stuck, making me repeat patterns of overworking, of trying to do too much, of taking on other people's work when that's not right, that's not fair for all of us. And so in that, what happens next is I have a lesson to share with you. And so I want to shine and share that with you guys. And I'm doing it with my cold because that's a part of the lesson and the teaching that I want to give to you, is to actually really be what it is that I'm sharing. So now let's have an actual breakdown of what are these spirals? What is this journey I've just taken you through? And how does it actually work? Within the awakening spiral, there are 5 layers we work with at our normal embodiment layer. And then there's an extra layer, which is for those when we step into our service, when we're really being in our full purposeful self. And these layers are cyclical. They sit within a spiral. So all 6 of them sit within a spiral, and when we complete it, we'll move into it potentially again. We may even have multiple layers within a spiral, depending on what lesson it is that we learn. Now, it's not just about the lesson. We are born predisposed to certain energy patterns, and that's because of our physical disposition and our emotional and mental disposition. We often see this in traditions like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, where we have a predisposition to certain emotional characteristics, mental characteristics, and physical needs that will suit certain foods and environment and exercise and routine in our life. And these energy patterns are going to be where we get stuck the most frequently, because they're the easy place for us to kind of get into. And that means, therefore, we have the shadow of an energy pattern as well as the light of an energy pattern. And so how can we move through both the shadow and what I prefer is into the gift of the energy pattern, to really be the master and move through those patterns with more swiftness and more kindness and ease. So I'm going to use my story to help explain this a little bit. I had made this intention about working in community. This is actually where we begin in an exploratory energy. Our energy is going up and out and it wants to explore and discover something new. And I call this exploring. And that's literally what we're doing. But the archetype that we use is called the weaver creator. We are out weaving what it is that we want to create in life. And that's really the gift in that archetype. What it is that you want to go out and explore so that you can bring it into something that's going to be a sacred purpose for you, that's going to really give you that fulfillment and moving forwards in your life. We might really do some intentional work as we go out into this exploratory phase. We need to know our yes and our no in order to know what we want and set an intention. So I set my intention. Then what happened? Well, actually what happened was I carried on exploring in these relationship dynamics. I was holding myself and being in this energy of exploring these relationship dynamics, these interactions. I was dancing, I was moving, I was exploring the energy of what this collaborative environment was bringing me. After I'd done everything I could do, I recognized it was time to stop. It was time for me to rest, to integrate all of this exploration into my body and fine-tune what was it that I just learned. And at this point, we call this the gentle luminary. We're going into a restful phase. We have to sit and be still and quiet. And often this can be when we're not used to working in these spirals, when we get sick, when we have really bad fatigue and we need to rest an immense amount. We're not integrating and releasing. And in fact, I'm in that phase again with my cold. I'm needing to rest a little bit more. My body is releasing, right, as I integrate these shifts that I've just made. Once the body has rested, we have started to integrate, there may be a step where we go, cool, now I'm going into my radiance. What is it I'm going to serve? And I start to explore that purposefulness. What is it that's going to be something that steps forwards into service? Now, this isn't necessarily about you needing to change your career, although that is a separate part of the way in which we work, but it's about how you hold yourself, who you are in your being when you're showing up. And so this was me getting really excited and going, oh wow, yeah, I've got a whole new vision of where I'm going. And so I stepped into activating that vision. And as I activated that vision, it took me back to my body, the shoulder injury. And this is where we return to the core. We return to the body and the core of this body, this lifetime, and we bring our energy in to create magic. And so the archetype here for the gift is the magic maker. This is where we start to really make magic, is when we tend to the body, we listen to its wisdom and what it is that it knows we need to understand. And often this can be injuries, my shoulder. It could be sickness, digestive problems. When the body is just not really playing along, we've lost our magic. We've forgotten that the core of who we are is magic makers, that we make the magic, but we have to listen to the body to understand the rhythm and the cycle that we're going to make magic in. And then as I understood with my shoulder and I knew what was going on, I needed to understand that also it was to do with my overachieving, and my overachieving is linked to my family. So what that took me to is the next stage, which is the field. When we hold our own energetic field in its own sovereignty, we know that it is full of our beauty, our wonder, and all the gifts that we're here to bring. But sometimes we can get a little caught in the shadow of the field, which is what I was doing, which is trying to overextend and let others into my field and take on their stuff. And so the field is not strong. And I love to call this the hearth keeper. That is the archetype, the one that loves to make everyone feel at home and have their right space in balance, that it's fair, distributes our responsibility and our reciprocal joy from that responsibility in balance, in the right way, in right relation. And so as I stepped into that Hearth keeper and I moved through stepping into my field saying, yes, I'm going to own what is mine and I'm going to give back what is not mine. Then again, I start to stabilize my own energy because it's my energy. It's what is stable within me. And so this is the next phase, the next part of the spiral being the mirror dancer. This is where we know what we are and we dance into our own stability, knowing that everything around us is mirroring back. But sometimes when we're in the shadow of this, we just get stuck. We feel like we have to endure, that it's just head down, hard work. Oh, it's so effortful. And that's that overworker. And so that's where we have to really drop down deep and say, what's going to make me stable without feeling like I have to hunker down? And we have to move this energy up and out rather than getting stuck in the down. And this gift that the mirror dancer brings is really tapping into your true voice, finding how it is that you express yourself, how it is that you are here to contribute. And then that will probably bring you back into exploring the ways in which you're going to express yourself. And so we've come back to that full cycle to where I began our little journey, which was the first archetype, the Weaver Creator, off on an adventure to discover something new to bring back as part of a new intention. So these are the awakening spiral layers. And this is how the awakening spiral works. And this matters because if we know where we are in the spiral, then you can stop fighting yourself. You can stop being angry with yourself about it's repeated, I've returned. And instead you can start to find practices that meet your energy where you're at and where it is that that's landing. And in the awakening spiral, we tend to this. So we have meditation and activations for energy work. We have nervous system resets and breath work to help activate the nervous system. We do movement through body practice, but also daily action, and where appropriate, ritual and prayer work. We then move into contemplation, reflection, and growth and understanding, as we also have practices to then rest, receive, and integrate, and set those new intentions. And there's always additional guidance available too, depending on where it is. So we've got these modalities to support the different layers that may be in your experience as you move through your spiral and the layer within the spiral to shift your energy and move into the next one more swiftly and with greater ease. Because when we're conscious of our own spiral and the layer that we're at, it actually takes the burden, takes the heaviness away, and it can make the journey more light whilst honoring the depth of the shadow, the depth of the emotions and what's really happening with such a level of integrity and love. And actually, it's when we can do that that we can really meet the shifts with greater speed, with greater ease, and with greater joy. To support you with your journey in the awakening spiral, I've created a quiz where you will find out where you are in the spiral, which layer it is that you are stepping into the gift of, and a short practice in which you can use to shift your energy pattern. You'll also get access to a whole free library of resources with different practices that will support you through that shift. If you type quiz below, we'll send you the link, and then you can find out where you are. Isn't about fixing yourself or even healing. It's about remembering your wholeness. One spiral and one layer at a time. Discovering the most beautiful being that you are underneath all these layers. May you have a most wonderful week, and I can't wait to connect with you again in the future.
Thank you for joining. Have a wonderful day.